Hello, and happy International Archaeology Day from the Kelsey Museum of Archaeology. Today, we are bringing some tasty treats to your kitchen as we explore two of the world's oldest writing systems, cuneiform and hieroglyphics. These writing systems developed around the same time in Mesopotamia and Egypt, but for very different reasons. Let's start with cuneiform. Cuneiform is a writing system which was developed in ancient Mesopotamia around 3200 to 3100 BCE. It first appeared in the city of Uruk and was being used as a bookkeeper's tool to record taxes and land and goods exchange. However, the use of cuneiform soon spread to include great works of literature, most famously the Epic of Gilgamesh, but also lamentation poetry, like seen on this tablet from the collections at the Kelsey. Tablets also included medical texts and personal letters, like this one, written by King Hammurabi of Hammurabi's Code fame. There are even tablets that have the instructions to one of the world's oldest board games, the Royal Game of Ur. Cuneiform means literally wedge-shaped in Latin, and it was called this because symbols were created when a reed stylus was pressed into wet clay. The tip of the stylus left a roughly triangular shape with tails of varying lengths in the clay. Symbols were formed by combining horizontal, vertical, and diagonal wedges. It is important to remember that cuneiform is a writing system, not a language. Just as the alphabet, which we use to write the English language, is also used to write Spanish and French, cuneiform was used to write more than a dozen different languages. These included Babylonian, Sumerian, Akkadian, Elamite, and Old Persian. Egyptian hieroglyphs begin to appear around the same time as cuneiform. However, where cuneiform was used primarily as an administrative and economic tool originally, hieroglyphs were used strictly in funerary and religious contexts. The earliest hieroglyphs that we have come from the cemetery site of Abydos and date to Dynasty 0. The messages conveyed in these funerary inscriptions were meant to help the deceased person get to and live in the afterlife. They included spells, which would help the deceased person on their journey through the underworld, as well as accounts of their great deeds done in life. These inscriptions were accompanied by images and sculptures of food, tools, and activities that the person might be doing in the afterlife. One of the objects that we find a lot of in Egyptian tomb are called ushabti, or shabti. These were supposed to be servants for the deceased person in the afterlife. They were inscribed with a spell, which would awaken them in the afterlife and give them a specific task to complete, like working in the field or folding your laundry. Ushabti were made from many different materials and came in assorted sizes. They were made from faience, like these, wood, clay, or even precious stone. The symbols used to write hieroglyphs are those that are found in everyday life. We can see body parts, animals, tools, architectural features, and even human figures. Reading and writing was not something that everyone could do in the ancient world. The literacy rates in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt are thought to be about 1%. Writing was done by professional scribes who had to go to school for more than a dozen years. Scribes could work for kings or temples, recording personal letters, tax records, land grants, and rental and sales agreements. During the dynastic period in Egypt, there were about 800 symbols being used, and there are between 600 and 900 symbols in cuneiform. Can you imagine going to school and having to learn all those symbols? 26 letters in our alphabet seems pretty easy now. The Kelsey Museum has many artifacts that have the cuneiform and hieroglyphic writing systems on them. These include objects like tablets, seals, coffins, ushabti, and other inscriptions. Today, we are going to make some scribal snacks in the form of cuneiform lentils and ushabti. But instead of using clay, stone, or faience, we are going to use a much more delicious material, sugar cookies. So let's get baking. We're not going to use an ancient recipe today, but we are going to make some edible replicas of ancient artifacts. You can find the recipe that I'm using in the description, or you can feel free to use your favorite sugar cookie recipe. So I have my ingredients prepared. In a bowl, I have mixed together my flour, baking powder, and salt, and I've set those aside. We're going to start by creaming together our butter and granulated sugar. I've let the butter come to room temperature. You want it to be soft, but not melty soft. The secret to soft, fluffy sugar cookies is creaming the butter and sugar together for a decent amount of time. I'm going to turn my mixer on kind of a medium-high speed, and I'm going to cream these together for about 5 minutes. I'll see you back here in a minute. So my butter has been creaming for about 5 minutes. I've turned the speed down, and I'm going to add my egg and vanilla. You might need to scrape the walls of your bowl to make sure all of the butter and egg is getting incorporated. So my egg is all mixed in, and I'm going to begin adding my flour mixture. You want to gradually add your flour in, scraping the sides as you go. Just turn the speed up a little bit so I really get it nice incorporated. All right. The other secret to sugar cookies is that they actually do take a bit of time because you're going to want to refrigerate the dough. Cold dough, cold butter, is going to make the dough much easier to work with since we're going to be cutting out ushabti and forming our own lentils. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide the dough in half for our cuneiform lentils and half for our ushabti, and we're going to refrigerate the dough. For my lentils, I'm going to take half the dough, pat it into a disc, wrap it in saran wrap, and put it into the refrigerator. For the ushabti, because we're going to be cutting out the cookies, one of the tricks that I use for cut out sugar cookies is that I actually roll out the dough into about a 1/2 inch thick sheet, and then I put it in the fridge. That way, when I take it out, my cookie cutter will go in and out smoothly. Another secret that I like, especially for sugar cookies, is that instead of rolling out on a surface that was dusted with flour, I use a little bit of powdered sugar instead. I've got my dusted surface, and I'm going to roll out my cookie dough. You want to make sure that you're moving your dough around, resituating it, and keeping that surface nice and floured so that it comes off of your floured surface. We're going to transfer our rolled out cookie dough to a cookie sheet so that it can sit covered in the refrigerator. So I'm going to carefully peel back. I carefully peel back my cookie dough. If it starts to fall apart, no worries. As Julia Child says, never apologize. We'll just put it back together. All right, so I have my cookie dough rolled out about 1/4 inch thick, and I am going to cover it with some plastic wrap and put both the disc of dough and the rolled out dough into the fridge for about an hour. Well, our dough has been chilling for about an hour now, so we're going to pull out the cookie sheet, with the rolled out dough first because we are going to bake the ushabti cookies before we decorate them. So, using a cookie cutter, a person-shaped cookie cutter, I'm going to cut out a couple of ushabti from my cold dough. You can see they come out quite nicely and retain their shape. But what I'm going to do so that they actually look like our little ushabti here is I'm going to smush his legs together. So we're just going to kind of gently move our legs together. There we go. So I want our ushabti to kind of look like that. So we've smushed his legs together. So now he looks more like our sample ushabti here. So I'm going to make several cookies of these. I'm going to put them on a prepared cookie sheet. And we're going to bake them for 10 to 12 minutes. All right, so I've got my ushabti cookies on my cookie sheet, and I'm going to put them into an oven that was preheated to 350 degrees for 10 to 12 minutes. While our ushabti are baking, we are going to make some cuneiform lentils. These round cuneiform tablets were actually how students would learn how to write cuneiform. Can you see the lines that are inscribed across this one? It's just like the lined paper that we use in school. However, these lentils, named for their shape, their round shape, were made from clay. On one side, the teacher has written out several symbols for the student to practice. On the other side, we see the practice. Because they were using wet clay, if they made a mistake or they finished with that lesson, they could just roll up the clay, flatten it out into another lentil, and start over. We're going to use the other disc of cold sugar cookie dough that we put in the fridge, and we're going to roll it into about 1-inch round balls. You can add lines to your cuneiform sugar cookies using a popsicle stick that I've cut in half. So you can just use the side and press lines into your cookie. This way you can practice some cuneiform symbols. Let's practice making the different wedges that make up the cuneiform script. We have vertical, horizontal, and diagonal wedges. Traditionally, a scribe would use a reed stylus, but we're going to use our popsicle stick to the same effect. Let's make a vertical wedge. We're going to press the corner of our popsicle stick into the cookie dough and rotate down so that the edge presses into the dough. There we have a vertical wedge. You can see the roughly triangular shape at the top and then the tail. Let's try the same movement, but in a horizontal wedge. So we're going to press the corner in and rotate down so that we create a tail. The third type of wedge that was used to create cuneiform symbols is a diagonal wedge. So we're going to press the tip in, rotate down along the edge, and there we go. Now, we are actually just one wedge away from the symbol for sky, which is another diagonal wedge, but going from the bottom up. So we're going to press and rotate, and there is the Sumerian symbol for sky. 4 wedges making up a single word. Let's try another word. This time we're going to make the Assyrian symbol for bird. This is made up of 3 wedges. 2 vertical, and 1 double-tipped horizontal wedge. So we're going to make our first vertical wedge, and then we'll make our double-tipped horizontal wedge, which means that we're going to press that tip in on both sides. Then we'll add our second wedge. You can find instructions for creating this symbol, as well as others, and a phonetic chart so that you can practice writing your name and other words on your other cuneiform lentils on our website. Once you're done decorating all of your cookies with cuneiform, you're going to place them on a cookie sheet and put them back in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. Or you can put them in the freezer for 15. This will help solidify the butter again and keep our cookies from spreading out too much as they bake. We're going to bake them in that same 350-degree oven for 10 to 12 minutes. Now, our ushabti have been baking and cooling while we've been decorating our lentils. You want to make sure that your ushabti are completely cooled before you add any icing or frosting to them. You can leave the sugar cookies plain, or like me, you can whip up a little bit of royal icing, which I have added some turquoise food coloring to, which mimics the color of the faience which our samples are made out of. For writing the hieroglyphs, I'm going to use some store-bought writing gel. I have black as well as gold because those are colors that we often see. Ushabti were usually inscribed with what would become known as the Book of the Dead, along with the name of the deceased person. We aren't going to write out the entire inscription today, which would have included a request that the ushabti do any manual labor required of the dead person in the afterlife. This included things like cultivating the fields and irrigating the riverbanks. You can use the downloadable chart from our website to use hieroglyphs to write out your name or just initials on the ushabti. I'm going to write my first initial, which would be the hieroglyph of an owl. And there you have it, some cuneiform lentils and ushabti. We hope you had fun making these tasty scribal snacks and learning about two of the world's oldest writing systems, cuneiform and Egyptian hieroglyphs. We'll see you next time.